Amen, amen. A happy social time, and we move into our Wednesday night service, our midweek oasis here at the Oakland Center for Spiritual Living. Today is Wednesday, February 16th, and I'm so glad to welcome you all for coming tonight. We're very excited about our speaker tonight, and I'm not going to reveal it. You can go look on the website, but I'll reveal it shortly. So hello, church family. What is our Wednesday night service and why do we call it the Oasis? Because it's a place where we can be together as a community to be spiritually refreshed between Sundays. We present our Wednesday night services in our version of satsang, where we have a speaker speak for about 20, 30 minutes or so, and then we open it up for discussion, hoping that your event tonight and this gathering is informal, intimate, and rich. That's our target, and we're going to hit it tonight. But we're also celebrating a lot this month. Tonight, we continue to honor our celebration of Black History Month. And I got a little bit of a note from John Russell, who puts the announcements together, and I'm starting to like what he has to say. So I'm going to share it with all of you to start it off, to reflect on this week. He said, this week we had Valentine's Day on Monday, and we hope your days were filled with all love of all kinds. And then yesterday was Susan B. Anthony Day, and today, of course, is Do a Grouch a Favor Day. So maybe take some of that leftover love you got sitting in the Tupperware in your fridge from Valentine's Day and spread it around that grouch in your life or at your office and see what happens. Wow. Okay, so that sounds like good advice. So that's what's been happening this week in John's life. Oh, so grateful for all of the contributions that everybody makes here. Our team working behind the scenes, I'm giving them a shout out early. Man, they make everything come together so we can have this service, which is going to be beautiful. So our annual theme this year is Wonder, Wonder Everywhere. And our monthly theme is The Inner Life. So if you're joining us for the first time, we welcome you. We encourage you to sign up on our homepage to receive our Village News newsletter. There's a place in the lower left-hand corner of the homepage where you can submit your email address, and you'll receive our newsletter that will tell you what's coming up in the upcoming week with all of the information, how to join calls, how to come to service, everything is there. Please also note that you'll be muted by our Zoom team. If you haven't done so already, I'm going to ask you, if you're not participating in the service, to turn off your computer. No, back that up. Take two. Turn off your camera and your microphone, because that will improve the quality of our transmission. Don't turn off your computer till 8:15. Thank you. Also, please stay tuned to the end, because we have some very special and important announcements that we would like to share with you. So it's time for us to open our service in prayer. And our speaker tonight asked that this lady come forward and deliver the opening prayer. So I am delighted to introduce I would say the primary force behind and in front of and all around our ministry of prayer. She leads our ministry of prayer. She's an outstanding practitioner. She does so many things around the center, I can't count. She's an active and supportive and loyal member of my family. So I am extremely honored to ask our opening prayer be delivered by the one and only Dorothy Mendez. Dorothy, would you do that for us?
Absolutely. Okay, everyone, let's just take in a deep breath and just exhale. One more deep breath in and letting go of all that took place today as we remain present right where we are, but giving thanks for this day and all that has taken place. And I know that God is all there is, and that each and every one of us on this call is grounded in the love, in the light of God. And I know that this service is already complete in the mind of God. And I know that as our speaker today, Dodie Chaney-Fernandes, lets her light shine on us tonight, that we are truly transformed and renewed by the words that she speaks to each and every one of us tonight. I am knowing for each and every one of us that we are truly grounded in the love, in the light of God. As I know that Dodie is truly grounded in God's love, in God's light. And therefore, this talk that she brings to us today transforms things in our lives that we could not have possibly imagined. And we give thanks. We give thanks for this emeritus practitioner who has been just absolutely fulfilling our community in ways that you could not have possibly imagined. We give thanks for her commitment to each and every one of us in this community. And I know tonight that she rocks this speech tonight, that we are just full of the light that shines from her to us. So as I, Dorothy, let go, I truly, truly let God. And together we say, and so it is. Amen.
So it- Thank you, Miss Dorothy.
Mhm.
What a way to start off our evening. So wonderful. Thank you, Miss Dorothy. So as Dorothy mentioned, our speaker is Dodie Chaney-Fernandes tonight, and she'll be speaking on Dodie's Black History. That's the title of her talk tonight. As Dorothy said, Dodie is a practitioner emeritus. That means she has earned through her many years of service to our community as a practitioner that esteemed title. She's also a long-standing member of the Ministry of Prayer that Dorothy leads. She's also the one that brought forward and started delivering our daily devotional at noontime, the guidance for a spiritual journey, which we look at the writings, the daily writings of the fabulous Dr. Daniel Lee Morgan, founder of the Guidance Church in Los Angeles. She brought that forward a year ago in February with the help of Deborah Jackson. And for some unknown reason, it has gone daily, every day at 12 noon on Monday through Fridays up to today and beyond. We've been doing it almost for a full year. Dodie, it's my great pleasure to bring you forward to take the stage and deliver your message to us tonight. We are so grateful for your presence and we appreciate you so very much. I turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Paul. And thank you, Dorothy, for that fabulous prayer. Welcome, everyone. And I'm so happy you're all here. In my presentation today, I want to tell you that I grew up in Las Vegas, and they have the saying, what happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas. I'm going to tell you guys everything. When my dad was in World War II, and when he was in service, he was stationed in the Bay Area. Actually, he was at Port Chicago. And I'll tell you about that story later. But he had a cousin that lived in Las Vegas that worked. This is the story I understand now. Everybody over me has gone on. So, but this is a story that I remember. He had a cousin that worked in a silver mine, and he told my dad that if he came to Las Vegas, you know, he could get work, no problem. This was actually during the Great Migration. You know, they're reading the book Caste, and many of you read her other book, Warmth of Other Suns, and she talks about the Great Migration of Black people moving from the South to anywhere they could. My family came to Las Vegas. My dad had wanted to take us to San Francisco area. This is the area he loved, but the cousin invited him and he went to Vegas. Las Vegas used to be considered, they used to call it Sin City, but now they call it entertainment capital of the world. I think they've not used that name a long time. But Vegas was like a small town. You had the downtown and the Las Vegas Strip. And we had a few shacks around the place. And then they developed a development for Black people that got out of the military, and it was called Berkeley Square. And Berkeley Square was named Berkeley for Tom Berkeley from the Bay Area. And I only recently found that out. I think I found it out when he passed away last year, a couple of years ago. But Vegas was such a strange place. It had sandstorms and they would light up the place. It's a desert, so it was sandstorms often. It rarely rained. The winters were cold, very cold, because it snowed on the mountain. Now Vegas is surrounded by mountains, but they only always address the one mountain, Mount Charleston, and that's the one that has snow on it. It had one lake, that's Lake Mead, Boulder Dam, and I can remember as a kid, the one field trip that we would take would be to the dam. And there's a spot in the dam where you can straddle your legs, and you would have one leg in Arizona and one leg in Nevada. Now, as kids, we thought that was really something. At any rate, I can remember that so vividly because we loved it. Everybody, that was a big deal. The downtown was Fremont Street, and the hotel, the Strip had 10 hotels, 10. And I think practically all of them are gone now. The Sahara, El Rancho, the Riviera, the Thunderbird, the Stardust, the Sands, the Dunes, the Tropicana, and the Hacienda. And I don't think any of those hotels are still there now. They're all new names, but at any rate, that's the way it was when I was growing up there. And when I went to school in Vegas, up to 8th grade, I went to all Black school. Now, I tried to plug in the history that flowed with the timing. So Brown versus the Board of Education was completed in '54, and that was supposed to integrate the schools. Well, in Las Vegas, I was 8 years old at that time, but my schools didn't get integrated until I was in 8th grade, so that was like 6 years later. They integrated the schools and we were bused. I add that because when things happen in history and you don't know that you're a part of it, you just don't know that you're a part of that particular history. So when I grew up in Vegas, it was very, very racist as well. I should go back. I went to junior high school, graduated, went to a business school. And at the business school I went to, secretarial bookkeeping, they would, after you finish your time, they would find you a job. So they got me a job at the Stardust Hotel as a buyer. And I didn't know this was history, but it was. I was a pioneer. I was the first Black person on the Las Vegas Strip that worked in any capacity other than maid, porter, dishwasher, the menial jobs. They used to, point blank, didn't have Black people working at all in any of the positions where you really make some money. So then in 1971, they had a consent decree, and the consent decree made it mandatory for all of the hotels to open all of the positions in every capacity. And that's when they allowed cocktail waitress, front desk, bellman, dealers, whatever. And all of those positions, except front desk maybe, get tips. You made money from not only your salary, but tips. And people were always flowing into Las Vegas. In fact, Las Vegas was one of the fastest growing cities in the United States for many, many years. When I was in high school, we had 3 public high schools and 1 private high school. And I went home once in the 1990s and they were opening 16 brand new schools at one time. And of those 16 schools, 5 of the ones they were opening were high schools at once. And they did that more than once. The city kept growing and growing. And if you go to Las Vegas or have you been there recently, you can see it has expanded from being just that little down in the valley to all the way out to through the mountains on every side. It continues to grow and expand. My brother was involved in the Vietnam War. And then the Black awareness period was about when California people were having free love and hippie movement. This was the Black awareness period in the Black areas. So Black is beautiful, Black pride, soul sister, soul brother. All that energy was alive and vibrant, and it was stimulating. And back to the hotels, they allowed people, after the consent decree, they were allowing people to have jobs in all those positions. But prior to that, I have to tell you that it was very, very racist. In fact, it was so racist that the entertainers that came there, and many of them were there. I mean, I think it was probably a real good resume thing to say that you have played Las Vegas. So everybody came to Vegas. At any rate, but many of the stars that played at these hotels were not allowed to eat in the restaurant or to stay at the hotel. So at one point, I think this was in 1955, and maybe you guys have heard of the Moulin Rouge. And they talk about the Moulin Rouge like it, when they mention it, like it was a long span of a really wonderful experience. But what happened is it only lasted 6 months because they actually tried to have a hotel where the entertainers could come. Not only could they stay there and eat there, but it would be like the freedom that was not allowed them in the hotels on the strip. But that only lasted about 6 months. And when they closed it, they said it had something to do with finance and something like that. But people that talked about the Moulin Rouge said they didn't believe that part because it has standing room only every night. And you all know that Las Vegas is 27-day, 24-hour town, city. Las Vegas, in each one of those hotels, they have thousands of people, each hotel, because you have 3 shifts for a 24-hour business, the day shift, the night shift, the graveyard. And you have these shifts, and these people are working at all these different capacities. So the growth of the city and the expansion of the city continue. But I have to back it up and tell you that I think part of the reason Vegas started to grow and boom so is because they must have did something to the water system. When I was a little girl, I remember that water being hideous. It was so terrible when you got it out of the faucet, it buzzed. It looked like you drinking an Alka-Seltzer. It was just that weird. At any rate, they must have done something because you don't get that. When you go there now, you get decent water. You get nice water. And when I graduated from school there, and I loved the entertainment. I mean, we would go see everybody. Once they open up the hotels, you can go to a lounge show for a 2-drink minimum, and you can see anybody that came. So I saw Gladys Knight and the Pips. I saw Wilson Pickett. I saw Huma Sakela. I saw Ike and Tina. I can just name stars because as a young person, you know, we would go every time somebody Black was on the strip, we'd go see them. And the people that were in the showroom, and that was the one where you go and you pay money, you have dinner and you see a show. We rarely went to that. The lounge shows were, now the way the lounge shows look is you can actually just walk off the casino and walk in. But the way it used to be, it was a little bit more private and it was very, very entertaining and fun. And I went on to work at the hotel. I worked at the Stardust for about 6 years, and then we moved to the Bay Area. And when I moved to the Bay Area, I think I spent more time trying to learn stuff because in Las Vegas, all those jobs, you didn't really have to have a degree, and they didn't specify a degree for many of those jobs. So you can just work. But in the Bay Area, this is the first time I ever recognized class levels, because in Vegas, a teacher or a preacher, a cocktail waitress, or a dealer made just as much money as they did. So it wasn't as if you can put the money in the place to make you on a higher level. But in the Bay Area, there's a little bit more interest in your background, your education. And so I continued to go to school when I came here. I also wanted to say that when I was in the housing development I lived in was one of the first ones that they built, and everybody that was anybody lived there. And the doctor, the black dentist, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Ink Spots, they lived there. Marcus Haynes, well, Joe Haynes was Marcus Haynes' brother. Joe Haynes lived down 3 doors down from my mom. Marcus Haynes was a member of the Harlem Globetrotters. And when, of course, when they play Las Vegas, at some point they would be down at his brother's house. So I say that to say that the class thing was so intertwined with the activities of the city that it didn't show up the way it does, I think, in other places, in particular in California. So when I moved to the Bay Area, I love this place. It's beautiful. After coming out of that desert, I just enjoyed the greenery, the shrubs, everything. I had a little bit of trouble with the weather because in Vegas, in the end of May, they have something called Eldorado, and that's carnivals and parades. And I make this distinction because my mom used to have us put on a sweater because it would get cooler in the evening. This is the end of May. But you wouldn't experience that sweater again until around Halloween, which is almost the end of October. So in between that weather was like 100 degrees many days, and sometimes 100 degrees at night. So when I moved to the Bay Area, the weather was quite a shift, but I grew accustomed to it because I enjoyed the different things that there was to do here. And it wasn't about gambling, it was about being active in all kinds of things, and I loved it. So I continued to express an interest in higher education. And when I was introduced to religious science, like I said last time, I love the idea that I'm never alone, that God is my life, that the life I live is God expressing. And I know and feel this in all that I try to do. I really am open and receptive to life moving through me in a way that allows the good of God to express. So I have a wonderful opening in me. And I don't question this because it feels like it fulfills itself all the time. I moved through that religious science, and I'm still involved as much as I can. And then I think the next big thing that happened was Barack Obama. When Barack became president, I was, as a Black person, these things are so stimulating to you. They go deeper, I think, in your awareness and consciousness. And I not only love him, but his wife and his children and his whole presidency. I was just elated. I mean, the energy from having something like that happen in your lifetime, coming from where Black people came from, is amazing, and it's wonderful. And after that, I think, I didn't mention the Black awareness period. I talked about the music and everything, but I didn't talk about the dress. We were, and the movies were, Black awareness experience. It was amazing. And I don't want to sound like this was something so separate from like I think the same the hippies were experiencing. It was an opening for them, a growth, a movement. And I loved it. I really do. And I still do. And so now moving into the awareness and acceptance of where I am right now in my life, I think to know the truth of yourself is a wonderful thing. To know that the God that we are is expressing in all things. It allows you to become more gentle with yourself, kinder, warmer. You know, the musician at church always says, Kenneth Cozy always says, judge less and love more. I like his little saying because I think that's the truth. If you don't spend your time judging and criticizing, it allows a space for you to be more acceptance. So that's where I am now. I enjoy this philosophy. I enjoy life being from a perspective that all is well, that God is good, that the things that I desire, that I believe in, that I trust in, can materialize in my life with the faith and the belief and trust. I go back to Vegas. I haven't been back in maybe 3 years since the pandemic, but when I used to go back to Las Vegas, I can remember when, and we flew all the time. When you fly into Vegas, it's like a beautiful, shining place. I mean, it's all lit up. And when I would go, as I got into religious science, I was able to see the God power in that stillness, in that beauty. Although I knew down in Vegas, there was a lot more going on than what I'm seeing up here. But I say that to say, that's the kind of stillness, and that's the kind of beauty that you're able to recognize broad enough to incorporate in you, to see it in all things, to be acceptance of it in all things. So I shared as much as I could remember to share. There was lots of other little things that kept coming up in my remembering my Black history, but my Black history was spotty in that when I was little, I didn't recognize that it was racism that made my mom take a piece of paper and draw around our feet to go and buy shoes for us because we couldn't go and get shoes at the store, or clothes for that matter. I didn't know that. And when you're past that, way past that now, she never made a big deal out of it. We just dealt with it. And in our neighborhood, like I said, I saw very few white people when I was little. The popsicle man, the donut man, there would be people coming through selling stuff because, you know, they'd sell potatoes, eggs, and watermelons on a truck or something, because Vegas was a desert and you didn't see so many gardens. I mean, there were stores, of course, but you didn't see that many gardens. So those were the white people that I saw. And my parents never really talked about white people like that. They just said, Mr. So-and-so or Miss So-and-so. Didn't mean anything to me, absolutely nothing. So my awareness of being Black didn't affect my childhood like, I don't know, maybe like it should have. I just didn't grasp it. And my Blackness is who I am. So there you have it. Thank you very much. So, Paul?
Yes, ma'am. Wow, Dodie. I had no idea that you were from Sin City. That is great. And I'm glad you didn't leave what happened there. So overarchingly, I'm going to ask before I open it up for discussion. I'm a big entertainment fan. As you know. So I did a little bit of study around Moulin Rouge, and that, just to clarify what you said, was the only place that the Black entertainers were before everything opened up. And
Absolutely.
they were forced to open it up. The Moulin Rouge was the Black resort hotel. And that's where Sammy Davis Jr. had to go to stay when he performed in Las Vegas until the Rat Pack got together.
Exactly. Sammy
Right?
Davis.
And Frank Sinatra and who else? Dean Martin and that made up
Joey
the Rat
Bishop.
Pack. And who?
Joey Bishop.
Joey Bishop. Judy Garland was a part of it. Debbie Reynolds was a part of it. Those were all the white headliners. And Sammy Davis Jr. was a part of it.
Yes.
So they offered Frank Sinatra a show for the Rat Pack at, I think, the Flamingo, which was one of the original strip
Yes.
hotels way back to, it was the original strip hotel.
Yes.
And I think it was the Flamingo. It may have been across the street down the way. Anyways, one of the big places, or the Sands or whatever, said, okay, bring the Rat Pack and you all perform. And of course, you know, Black entertainers performed on stage, but they wouldn't let Sammy Davis Jr. stay there. And Frank Sinatra said, if Sammy Davis Jr. can't stay here, I'm not performing here.
That's true. That's very
And so that hotel, which was basically a white only hotel with Black entertainers as well as white entertainers, broke the rule and let Sammy Davis Jr. stay there.
Absolutely. That is
Is it also true that African Americans were not allowed to go to Tahoe, to get on a bus and go to Tahoe? Do you know anything about that, Dodie? I know there were restrictions in Las Vegas, but I didn't come to California until 1974. My first visit, I take that back, was 1963, but I heard that African Americans were not allowed to get on the bus to go to Tahoe. Is anybody able to
validate that?
Yeah, validate that for me.
I never heard of it, but I'll look it up. We'll find out before the end of.
Okay.
Well, I also wanted to
I
ask.
went to the Moulin Rouge, Dodie, but it was in France. It was
Yeah, me too.
opened up. Yeah.
I wanted to say too, since Paul mentioned Sammy Davis, Dorothy Dandridge was performing at one of the hotels, and apparently she put her toe in the swimming pool. And the next day when she came out, or that night, they had drained the pool. And this was supposed to have happened to more than one entertainer.
Right. I think that was at the Flamingo, actually. I think I remember that back to those days. But yeah, I had heard that story too about Las Vegas. But Dodie, you were an icebreaker there. Can you expound a little bit more about being the first? It sounded like managerial job, not a domestic job. It was a more higher.
It was a clerical job. I was a buyer at a hotel. And all of the hotels have all these different departments. They'll have sales and purchasing and whatever, but they would only allow white people to work in those. But because I had gone to this business school and they placed me, I got that job. And I worked there, but everybody else, I'm talking about hundreds of people, worked in the kitchen as a porter, as a maid. Like when you go to Las Vegas right now, if you get a room, your maid is probably a Latino, because when they opened it up for Black people, people went to school to advance and do those jobs that would allow them to make more money. Dealers were, I mean, it was just really a wonderful experience to be able to shift from making no money to making some money. And the sad part about it is, well, I'm assuming everybody knows about when the crack cocaine hit the Bay Area, it hit Las Vegas as well. Now, and I used to, whenever I go home, I would go to the new hotel just to see the new hotel and look around, see the minorities that were in there, because that's what you do. But it diminished because if you are a dealer, you get money on payday, but you get money every night. I mean, or cocktail, you get money. So if you were into drugs, you could really do that, have drugs until payday or after payday. Now they used to have a system that said in order to get a job on the strip, you have to have a sheriff card. And a sheriff card was something where you went and got tested so that they can determine whether you had any drugs in your system or whatever, because the money is kind of loose, it's free flowing. So I guess they were trying to make sure that you didn't get any that's money. So at any rate, I say that to say that the purchasing job was, they didn't have any other Black people in any other capacity. And in any of the hotels, we had a Black seamstress at the Stardust where I worked. But like I said, all those hotels have been imploded. Is that what you say when you take them down?
Right, Stardust is gone, yeah.
Yeah.
So Dodie, you were really broke the ceiling when you went into that job. And we have a celebrity amongst us, a history maker. Oh, Dodie, how enlightening. And it just seems right. You just seem like the right kind of girl to just tear it up. So yay.
Thank you.
Can we show appreciation for, turn on your cameras and your microphones, everyone, and thank Dodie for sharing that. I'm sure it brings up some questions. Dodie, you're willing to answer questions from the group a little bit during
Absolutely.
the period? Peter's going to be our moderator. So what we're going to ask you to do is, if you have a question, raise your hand like this, or if you could use your reaction button like I'm going to do right now to raise your hand. And so Peter can recognize you, so we can keep it a little orderly. I know there's a lot of questions out there. Dodie, again, thank you. And Peter, I'll turn it over to you to moderate.
Okay, Judith, go.
Okay, hi Dodie.
Hello.
I was having internet connections problems, and I had to it kept knocking me out and coming back in and knocking me out. So I missed the beginning of your talk. And I wondered if you could just repeat, what was your job that broke that Paul was just talking about, that broke the ceiling?
I was a buyer in the purchasing department.
Oh. In what? Buying what? What were you buying?
They bought everything for the hotel except food and liquor.
Oh, wow. Okay, thank you. That was my question.
And that was a higher level job.
Mhm.
And she was the first Black person to get that class of job in Las Vegas, in the hotel industry at the Stardust Hotel.
That's awesome.
I shared with them because it's just as racist as any place else. And by it being that way, the only Black people were only getting menial jobs, dishwashers, maids, like that. Any of the other activities that were in the hotel industry were from white people. And the interesting part about it is they hired a lot of foreigners. Like, when I was in purchasing, there was a lady from England, Wales, or something like that. And there was a guy from Germany. I mean, this was kind of strange for me because growing up in Las Vegas, I knew white and Black. And I shared with the people on cast, I didn't even know Jewish. I didn't know. And so when I went to the hotels and they would have these people that were actually foreigners, just like they do now, I guess, we're actually working at the hotels where there were people, Black people that have been there forever.
Mm-hmm.
Always also shared with you that you didn't have to have a degree to work in these things. You just had to know how to do the job. So anyway, another question?
Great. Carmen, yeah, go.
Hi, Dodie. Thank you for your share.
Oh, you're welcome.
Can you hear me? Oh, you know what?
Yes.
My earphones. Hold on. I'm sorry. Sorry about this. Sorry about that, you guys. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you spoke of, it was interesting. You spoke of your family, your parents never saying anything about the racism, yet you knew it existed. How did that work? How did you, and growing up with it and seeing the racism, how was it never discussed at the table, or how were you able to even think that, to know that was racism when you're not hired or when you don't see a lot of Black people? How does that work?
I said that when I mentioned the fact that we had to measure our shoes and on paper and stuff like that. I didn't that as being racist. I didn't that not being able to go in the store and try clothes on and try shoes on a racist thing. I just knew.
What did you think that was, though?
My mom just not being able to take all of us kids shopping.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Okay.
I didn't recognize it as until it was identified.
How was it identified? What was the identification?
Well, as I got older and as I understood that these were the things that other people were allowed to do, that we simply weren't allowed to do it. Something that we did wrong or we did to make that happen. So, no, they didn't talk about racial stuff.
That's interesting. And I was thinking, I'm not going to take the place hostage, but we were discussing in class on Monday the fact that there was no discussion after the Civil War, or then Jim Crow started and that kind of thing. Isabel Wilkerson posted that not looking at your past and just moving forward and like nothing ever happened. How it was, and we know, as a Black person, I know why our parents didn't say anything, but how that somehow, damaged us yet kept us safe. And then I'm thinking, too, in growing up, my parents didn't talk about racism per se, but there was always some conversation about, what the white man did that day or what happened that day, because my parents worked for white people. And so, I just thought it was interesting that, you didn't think anything of that.
Well, Carmen, let me just say, are you an only child?
No.
Okay, well, it was 10 of us. Enough stuff going on in our family that wasn't something that took top priority. It just
Yeah, I understand. I just was that. I just, like I said, it's just interesting that they didn't say anything. Your parents didn't say anything about it. So they had other things going on. So I had just never heard that before. But thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's all right. It's good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay, Dorothy, go.
Dodie, I want you to know that you're one of my heroes, okay? And I just want you to know that I love you, I support you, and I appreciate you right where you are.
Thank you.
I'm an only child, and my parents never talked about racism to me in any way. My father is the person who introduced me to the opera and all of that, and I love that. But I got married, I left upstate New York and came back to visit my family, and I went to this restaurant called Nick Benny's with my white girlfriend who was Italian. We go to this restaurant and the waitress acts like I'm not there. All her information, all her questions were geared to my girlfriend, who was Italian. And we ended up leaving her a penny as a tip. But that's when I first experienced racism. And I was like, holy moly, no one ever told me that I was not wanted in this particular restaurant. That we as African Americans, we were called Black folks then. No, we were called Negroes then, okay? But we were not wanted in certain areas of our community. And so that experience really threw me a loop, because this one young lady I used to work with, she was from Atlanta, and she said to me one day, you Black people up in the North don't know what it is to have racism against you. And she was absolutely right. But I want to commend you because our high school gave all the Black kids jobs, domestic jobs. All the white kids got jobs to go to IBM. Okay. And when my mother found out that I was working domestically for this Jewish lady who had me scrubbing her back stairs with a brush, my mother said, if you ever go back there, I'll kill you myself. Okay. Because that's not what she wanted for her daughter, because my mother grew up being a domestic and a nanny. So I want to say thank you for paving the way, girlfriend, paving the way.
Yeah.
Well, in my high school, when you got to be a senior, if you had all your credits, you could just take government and you can work the rest of the day. So I had one of those jobs, and I actually worked in the downtown area. They didn't have very many Black people. I knew they had another Black saleswoman.
Wow.
It was at the dollar store. The National Dollar Store was by Asians, maybe Chinese people. So I worked there. So I was moving through this whole racial thing, not recognizing that I'm moving through it, because that's.
Wow. God bless.
Thank you. Larry?
Peggy's next.
Okay.
Hey, you go first.
You're muted.
Thank you, Dodie. Thank you so much for sharing all that you have shared. That's wonderful. I have a question, however, about this wonderful job where you were the buyer. How did the people act around you? You were the first Black person. How did they treat you?
I don't know whether it's because I was a girl, but I didn't get any mess from anybody. They were friendly with me. They were
Very good.
Apparently the ones that didn't like me didn't bother me, because I never felt anything. In fact, I had a friend like Dorothy, a white girl that was, she just became my friend. We were just lunching together and talking about boys and men and whatever.
Yeah. That's wonderful. I'm glad to hear
I
that.
didn't catch any of that badness.
So your very first experience, or the first experience you had that opened up your awareness that the world was not what you thought it was when?
I think when I got in high school, when I was in junior high, it was just, we were bused. Let me just tell you this. We lived in the same house. I grew up in the same house forever, and till we were all grown. But at one point, each one of them, I'm the seventh child, so there are 3 under me. But the bottom half of this 10 was basically still at home when others got married and my brother went to the military and all kinds of stuff. But all of us 5 kids went to a different junior high school. I mean, you know how they say your zone or your whatever. I don't know whether Vegas was growing at that, and I think it was at that fast rate, but we all went to a different junior high school, which I found to be incredible. At some point, we were like in different schools at the same time, in the same house. So to answer your question of mine becoming aware of racism, I don't know. It just happened, and I just recognize that something's right here.
No, thank you. Thank you. I didn't have any really negative experiences for years. And so I just was wondering what triggered yours. I actually had to leave my neighborhood and go to Florida before I had my very first really serious experience that I had been taught and told, but I just hadn't had it. So I'm glad you had the life you've had and that you're sharing that. Thank you.
The last one, that when I was in high school, now this is so silly because I'm going through all through high school and we were graduating, and somehow they were having us go 2 by 2. And the person that was supposed to walk with me was a white boy, and he didn't want to walk with me. I found that out, but of course I was graduating. I didn't even care. I mean, it didn't affect me.
Didn't affect you.
You know, I didn't get that.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Thank you.
Larry, did you want?
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead. And
well, Dodie, I appreciate your sharing your experiences, and it's ironic at one level because I appreciate the history about Las Vegas, because as recently as December, I spent a week in Las Vegas celebrating my 85th birthday. And one of the reasons I go to Las Vegas is because I don't gamble. I like the entertainers. And of course, two of the shows that we saw were by Black performers. But as it relates to the whole racial thing and growing up without having maybe a sense of your Blackness or whether it was affecting you, you were fortunate in that regard. And I grew up in South Carolina during the Jim Crow era. And from the moment you were born and you have any consciousness at all, you are totally aware that you're Black and that you're treated differently, because the whole system was designed to show you how you were inferior, including going to separate schools, the water fountains, the bathrooms, everything, Black, white, colored. Well, they used the term colored back then, you know. And one of the things that we used to, as a kid growing up, you do begin to ask questions, but one of the things that was always, we couldn't understand is the white water fountain and the colored water fountains would be right next to each other, but the colored water fountain was just a spigot on the wall. White water fountains would be a more fancy one, but the water was coming out of the same pipes. But we used to always talk about, well, how is the colored water different than the white water? You know, well, it wasn't actually, but you know, I grew up in an all-Black situation. Blacks and whites couldn't even be buried in the same cemetery. But the irony of and the idiocy of the racism that you experienced was, even though you couldn't associate with or be involved with or couldn't be trained by or have any experiences that were similar to the whites, Black women were nannies for a lot of white kids.
Yeah.
But the white folks would allow the nannies, the Black nannies, to nurse their babies.
Oh.
Want to talk about insanity?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, I appreciate the history, but growing up in a situation where you 24/7, you know who you are, you know you're Black, you're taught and made to feel and actually treated. If you're walking down the street in my hometown, we had a sheriff. Some of you are familiar with Barney Fife, who used to be on the TV show. We had a sheriff. His name was Maud Maccabee, and never will forget him. He looked just like Barney, but he was a stone racist. And if you were walking down the sidewalk and a white woman was coming and you didn't step off the sidewalk, he'd kick you in the ass.
Oh my God.
He'd kick you off the street by kicking you in your ass. Okay. So everything you knew, you were Black, different, inferior, whatever. And the problem with that is you grow up with a lack of self-confidence. You grow up feeling less than. And to this day, I still struggle with a lot of the impact of that in my adult life, even though I, made it successfully and had a successful career otherwise. But those latent treatments for the first 18 years of my life, still have impact to this day. And particularly from an education point of view, because our new books in our Black school were the used books from the white school.
Oh, we got that too.
Yeah.
We got that.
So, but I appreciate you sharing that with me, and feel blessed that you didn't have a more adverse experience growing up.
And I want to
never
tell
know
you,
exactly how it would have affected you.
right. I want to also say, and I failed to say this earlier, that when we were at the Black school, it's kind of like a two-edged sword, because when the school was segregated, all the cheerleaders and majorette and drum people, everybody was Black.
Mm-hmm.
And when we went to the white school, you were selected or voted, and we never ever was able to have enough votes for the Black cheerleader.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the basketball teams, all these things were, when you went to the Black school, it was all Black. It was no problem. When you went to integrated school, it had to be just somebody made it and somebody didn't.
Yeah, well, that's an experience I never had.
Oh, yeah,
Anyway,
Yeah,
thank you though.
right.
you're welcome.
Thanks. Constance. You're muted.
Dodie. I know I've heard you talk before about growing up and how important the church was, that you would often be in church for the whole day on Sunday. And what did the church ever talk about what was going on in the community, or
Yeah. Well, little bit. I mean, when you're young and you go into church, you just doing what you're told to do. So that's what. When I became a teenager, I was involved in Teen Democrat and NAACPU. I was ushering the church. I mean, I was doing what I did. And I can remember as a teenager, and I tried to look up and see who this was. There was going to be a major fight in Las Vegas. And the Black people that really were trying to get the places integrated had met with whoever the powers that be and told them that it was going to be a demonstration on the strip at this fight. Well, they didn't want that to be seen on TV, you know, and we as teenagers or kids were kind of excited about being able to be in a demonstration. But at the last minute, they took it away. They said, no, we're not going to do it because they have honored all of the things we asked for. Now, I'm assuming that that was probably the kind of thing that was going on that forced the hotels in Las Vegas to allow Black people into the casinos and to be able to gamble at the hotels. I live at the hotels like that. But as a young person, I guess, you know, I wasn't thinking about that. When I was in my church, a Baptist church that I love, and I have to tell you one other thing that's so funny. As an adult, I can remember when I was in 5th grade, my teacher said something like, whether you believe in God or not. And I can remember thinking that was a horrible thing for her to say, because as a poor person, I was forgiven, you know, and I never even considered anyone not believing in God. I never even thought about that. And here she was, a teacher of all people, to say something like that. I remember that being so, I don't want to say horrifying, but it just kind of blew me away. So I say that to say, when I get into whatever I'm into, I must be in it, because we all believed in God. I mean, she just surprised me. That's all. I hope I answered your question, Constance.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
Well, it's time to start ending our event tonight. I'm hoping everybody was satisfied with the share period. Dodie, you feel good about it? I do.
Yes, I'm good.
And we all love you. If that doesn't come across, I know it does.
Thank you.
There's probably some chats in there for you to look at. But I'll go ahead on to the announcements. Please stay with us because we have a lot of good stuff coming up that you need to know about. And then Dodie's going to close us in prayer at the end. So I know you want to stay for that. So Peter, if you will. So this Sunday, February 20th, Reverend Verona Garland will be speaking on the subject of Forgive to Live. We will be in Zoom, so please join us there with meditation at 10, the service at 10:30. Due to the recent surge in coronavirus, our Sunday service will continue in Zoom through the month of February. We want to keep you all safe. We appreciate you. Next Wednesday, February 23rd, Practitioner Emeritus Carmen West Jefferson will be speaking on the ultimate fear buster. Carmen's with us tonight. So that will also be in Zoom, meditation at 6:30, service at 7 next Wednesday night. Now, we've been celebrating Black History Month, and we have wonderful groups for you to consider being a part of. The first one is hosted by Carmen West Jefferson, the Castle Book Study that started on February 7th, and you can still join this 8-week journey, or what's left of it, into exploring the consciousness concerning difference and hierarchy in the United States. By becoming aware, we then have the power to change that consciousness to one of unity. And that's on Monday nights. Guidance for Spiritual Journey meets daily at noon for half an hour or slightly more. Now, this is hosted generally by our Dodie, Chaney-Fernandes, who's here tonight, and Deborah Jackson, who's also here. I get a little bit of freewheeled in time there too. So if you can join us at noontime, the link is on the events page. We discuss the readings of Dr. Daniel Lee Morgan, a prominent African-American minister in the CSL movement. And he served for over 40 years as founder and minister of the Guidance Church of Religious Science in Los Angeles. His writings and daily messages are just awesome. I just can't tell you how life-changing they've been for me. This group was only supposed to go for a month during last Black History Month, but it continued. In the beginning of March, it'll be a full year. So if you feel like joining us for a little refreshment at noon, Dr. Dan's the place for you. And Dodie will be just glorious to be a part of that experience. So please think about joining us at noon. You can access both of these events on the events page of the website. Also, the season for nonviolence has begun, and for 64 days, we will put our consciousness and attention on nonviolence. Did you forget to sign up? It's not too late. We know that we pay attention to things, then those things will grow. So let's grow nonviolence as a community. When you sign up to take part, you will receive a daily email with thoughts to contemplate. You will also be able to pick up a booklet to do daily journaling. Please sign up today by going to the events page. The Oakland Center's annual meeting is Friday, March 4th at 6:30 by Zoom. Everyone is invited. Official voting members will be receiving a notice and a ballot by email this week. Make sure to check your spam and/or junk folders if it doesn't arrive in your email inbox. And the day after that, join Practitioner Constance Chapman on Saturday, March 5th at 10 a.m. for a morning of transformative play. Do you remember the joy as a child of finger painting and playing with the paint? Tap into that joy again or experience for the first time. The purpose of this 3-hour workshop is to guide you to articulate and embrace the gifts that you are carrying inside. Whether you call it a gift, your personal medicine, or your contribution, we have all our unique traits and skills we bring to our family, community, and the world. This workshop is planned to be in person, and we ask that everyone be vaccinated. All supplies and snacks are included. Space is limited, so please register now on the events page, and the cost is $45. Let's take a minute and read the new Minister's Covenant together. I ask that you leave your microphones off so the transmission will be better and just read and follow along with me. My new Minister's Sacred Covenant prayer. There is only one life. This life is good. This life is God. This life is my life now. In knowing that I am one with this life that is God, therefore know that I am one with all of its blessed expressions, which includes the presence of a new minister for my beloved spiritual community. Because I know that the highest purpose of my new minister is to reveal spirit, I therefore know that my new minister is a revelation of God as wisdom. I further know that my new minister is the fulfillment of that which has been promised by Spirit, for it is written, I am filled with divine wisdom. I allow divine mind to fill my mind now. As I stand in agreement with my beloved community, I see my new minister revealed before me as unity in the community. I now intend to experience my new minister in full cooperation and agreement with my community, knowing this truth about myself. For I am inspiring unity in diversity, embracing and nourishing our community. I am awakening the wisdom within. I am healing and expanding our community with the power of love. I am engaging the community and building a world that works for everyone. I am deepening family consciousness. As I now accept the highest expression of a new minister into my life, I know that they are revealed in a way that illumines spirit and serves the highest and greatest good of all who are touched by their presence. I am grateful God is gracious, and so it is. Ashe. So as I breathe in this prayer, I take a moment to remember that it's important in our contribution, whatever it may be, that we give it lovingly and willingly, so our center can grow and prosper and spread the idea that we intend to create a world that works for everyone. So Peter, on the next slide, if you will, let's repeat our giving affirmation. Hold your offering close to your heart as we say, this gift I give is God in action. It does good work in the world and blesses creation. And so it is. So I pass the digital giving bowl to Dodie and then to all of you in my family of squares in front of me, receiving your gift, at least in thought, because that's where it all begins, is in divine mind. But when you get into the reality and the truth and the physicality, into the manifestation of making that donation, here's how you can do it. You can go to the homepage and press the donate button. And for credit cards, or you can mail it at the address listed. You can text it to 510-327-3431. Or if you know how to use Zelle and as a part of that giving community, you can Zelle your donation to giving@oaklandcsl.org. All of this is found on our homepage at oaklandcsl.org. So with that, I bless and release, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful for everybody that's been here tonight. Please make sure you check out our homepage. Also, don't forget the events page, and follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook for special updates and content you'll only find by liking and subscribing to OCSL. So in that moment of gratitude, I want to thank Peggy today for starting us off with the meditation, for Reverend Jerry for doing our grounding prayer at the pre-service to pull us all together. You can crown me with multiple hopes tonight. I'll take it. Thank you, Reverend Jerry, for being with us as always. Also, I want to thank our wonderful Zoom team behind the scenes that take care of us, Peter and Alice and Helene and Trisha, welcoming our new AV member, Sabrina, who's learning the ropes. Yes, indeed. Welcome aboard. Thank you for answering the call. Also want to thank our administration team of Constance Chapman and John Russell. And as always, my moral support and always willing to back up anything here on Wednesday nights and everything I do at the center is Zoe DeMuro. He's my buddy. He takes care of me, and I'm glad I have him. I also want to thank all of you for joining us. Please come back and visit us. And mostly, Dodie, we thank and love you for your sharing tonight.
Thank you.
And the warriors are ahead.
So, Dodie, if you would you please close us out in prayer tonight?
Absolutely. Let's take a deep breath so that we shift and let it go. I thank all of you for being here and knowing that there's just one life. That life is God. That life is everywhere present, expressing in all things. The life of God is revealing itself in and through each of you and in and through me. And this oneness came together so beautifully. My love of life, my love of God, my love of expressing came through me as God tonight to share with you. And I'm so thankful that you were receptive, you were asked questions, you shared this experience. It was a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for me to flash back on my life and recognize how blessed God has always, always, always expressed itself to me. And as I become stronger in my philosophy of religious triumph, recognizing that God is right where I am at all times, I utilize this power. I express this power in all that I think, say, and do. We talk a lot about praying without ceasing. I talk a lot about recognize that I am one with God, as is each one of you. So thank you all for coming. Thank you, God, for a wonderful time. And may we all have a blessed evening for this and all the more. I say thank you, I release it and accept it is done. And so it is.
And so it is.
Good night. Whew.
Right.
So beautiful.
Right.